I gotta do it now? Oh, damn. All right. All right. All right. Welcome. My name is David Hajiev, and I'm the Student Government Association Staff Secretary for Environmental Resilience and Green Initiatives. On behalf of the Student Body President Alexander Rubido and the Student Body Governor Brian Levine, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the 4th lecture in the Student Government Association's Environmental Resilience Lecture Series. Today's lecture is Straight Talk, a framework for equitable Caribbean blue economy, the Fish and Fins model. Today's speaker is an ocean conservationist based on the island of Montserrat, whose research investigates the potential of citizen science for all equitable and restorative Caribbean blue economy. Alongside her research, she's also found multiple marine awareness programs which center around climate education and conservation. In 2015, she founded the Fish and Fins, which teaches children to swim, snorkel, and get involved with marine science. Please welcome Vita Wade.
Thank you so much for this very kind introduction, and it's my absolute honor to be joining you today from Montserrat, where I live and work, and I'm just really looking forward to an interesting chat where I'll be introducing some of my work that I've been doing over the past several years, and also hoping to leave some time at the end for questions that you may want to ask me. So, good afternoon. I'm going to start by sharing a quick video of my island where I live and the work that we do at Fish and Fins, which was kindly introduced as being the ocean conservation nonprofit that I started on the island of Montserrat for children to learn to swim, snorkel, and get involved in ocean science. Children are in our program from the ages of 6 or so to up to 35, doing a number of initiatives to do with advocacy, awareness, innovation, and our Learn to Swim programming as well. So quickly, I'm going to go straight to the video, and I hope you enjoy this. It's a snapshot of Fish and Fins in action on Montserrat. I'll share my screen real quick.
It's rebuilding time. All those presents abroad. Somebody go run me. West from the country. Every hotel don't come. Scientific shake and rumble. Act up now and then. But paradise will settle down again. I love every hill and gully. Every drop, stream and valley. She's still right there for a city. Montserrat nice, nice, nice.
Okay, I hope you enjoy that. Now, if you have any questions at all for me today, just keep a note of them, or I don't know if there's a chat space that you can share your questions in the chat or in the Q&A. But so yeah, that's the program Fish and Fins, and I started it on Montserrat without very much at all. I didn't even have money in my pocket. I just had the will to make this program happen. And the reason why was because of 2 things, really. I grew up on this island, minutes from the beach, an incredible coral reef, and I didn't know that we had a coral reef in our backyard. I didn't know that turtles were in our backyard. I didn't have that experience because I grew up in a very simple family, and we didn't have the means to expose me to swimming classes and diving and all these different things. So my parents were also scared of the sea, as predominantly a lot of Caribbean people are, which sounds really crazy, but living on an island like this, one would assume that many people or everyone would know how to swim and feel confident in the water, but that's not always the case. And so I thought that I should do something about it. Very close to my home, when I was just about drafting the ideas in my head about what I would like Fish and Fins to be, a child was in some parents were actually housekeeping at a villa here, and the child was at the house, fell into the pool, nearly drowned. Someone saved her, but the dad drowned. And it was another moment for me that made me realize that no matter what I had or didn't have, that we would start Fish and Fins, and that this was urgent work. I really was also recognizing the fact that we were in a climate emergency, and there was a lot of pressure being created on our environment, especially from the fashion environment, because I was working in the UK before I returned to Montserrat in fast fashion. I was working for a brand you might be familiar with called Topshop, and I realized that we need to do more, and I wanted to live a more purposeful life. And I guess the final thing was that on the island of Montserrat, where I'm from, we have about 4,500 people. We're a territory of the United Kingdom, and we're sort of dependent on grant aid. So we don't have a sort of flourishing economy. We also are in this position where, folks, we've got three challenges. We've got migration and brain drain. We've got survival being one, and we have an economic situation that we have to deal with. But when I returned home from the UK, after I was sort of evacuated from a volcanic eruption, in 2011, I was spending a lot of time with local fishers, and those fishers exposed to me so much and taught me so much about our underwater life below water. They taught me so much about our coral reefs and fish behaviors and so much that was really valuable to me, and I knew would be valuable to others, especially in our community. So I started Fish and Fins. I wrote a 2-page letter, and I said to an ocean conservation company that was working in Montserrat, I just arrived in Montserrat. I said to them, I've got this idea for this project. I really would like your support. I don't need your money. I just need the equipment. And then they looked at it and said, fantastic, this is a really great idea. We want to support you. And the scientists that I was working with at the time, some of you may know Ayanna or heard of Ayanna Johnson, who is a marine biologist, and Stephanie Tate, who is also one of the owners and directors of the Ocean Agency, who's doing a lot of work at the moment with the UN Ocean Decade. So that's a little bit about how Fish and Fins began. And if anyone has any questions later on in terms of like how you can start your own program or some of the challenges that I might have gone through in that process, please feel free to share with me. But today's talk is going to be about the framework for equitable Caribbean blue economy and the Fish and Fins model. And the reason why I wanted to share this with you is because it's all about lessons that I have learned over the past several years. And one big moment that came to me was in 2017, I think it was 2018, around there. Hurricane Dorian, you would be probably aware of, had arrived at the shores of the Bahama Islands, and it stayed over the Abacus Islands for, I think it was like 2 days. Never before in the Caribbean we had seen that. I had lived through a Category 5 hurricane in '89, so I'd seen and known the terrifying effects of a very strong hurricane. But to see a superstorm like that completely destroy an island of people, put their community at risk, their economy destroyed, and so much hurt and destruction, it really put the fear of God in me too, to do a little more and to think deeper about the work I was doing with Fish and Fins. At the time, Fish and Fins was very much a about just swimming, snorkeling, and getting excited about the marine science. But then I thought to myself, well, we could teach the kids to get excited about marine science, but then what? Then what next, right? There's so many challenges that are upon us, and I think that all of these little people that you see in front of us here are going to have a task upon their shoulders, and how best can we prepare them through our program to be able to be confident enough to collect data, share data, be solution creators, be innovators in this space. And so I thought of the fact that the blue economy is something that we need to really sort of explore. Traditionally, the blue economy has been a space where foreign investors benefit. The funds in foreign exchange come into the island and back out again. And the people in the community are not necessarily the ones that benefit. Their standard of living hasn't necessarily increased. The infrastructure hasn't improved. And so I thought, okay, we can do all of this stuff for the kids, but we need to start to connect the dots and let them see how the blue economy, our ocean space, the same reefs that they're getting up close to, the same ocean that they're playing and getting more confident in, is going to be able to create jobs, good jobs, and opportunities for them. So for those of you who might not be aware fully of the blue economy, or even who have, I thought I'll share this quick slide because it's typically the definition of the blue economy that we all work with. The blue economy is being a sustainable use of ocean resources for economic growth, improved livelihoods and jobs, and ocean ecosystem health. It encompasses things like renewable energy, tourism, climate change, and climate action, fisheries, waste management, and maritime transportation. And I suppose one of the questions that I have been asking myself a lot is, what we are doing really sustainable, or do we need to really focus on our resilience and restoring our habitats and our ecosystems, especially in the Caribbean, which our need and pressure to develop our economies and grow our economies to improve the life of our people has resulted in a loss of a lot of important ecosystems in this region, mangrove, coral reefs, things that are necessary for development. Even here in Montserrat, where you saw in the video before, because our island was displaced by volcanic activity, where the kids were jumping off a sort of jetty there is now the space for a new port development. And in improving that port, we're going to lose coral reef. But, you know, so this is a very sensitive issue. And I thought it was very important that local people, Black and brown people, get up front and center in the conversations, that we had the information on the resources to be able to sit in the room and have reasonable discussions, ask the right questions, see that the right safeguards are put in place, the right policies are put in place. And so I've been working a lot within the region and with my program here to do as much as I can to prepare our community and prepare our next generation for that work. So in terms of the lessons, I wanted to go straight into the lessons that I've learned and sharing those with you. And these are key points, 5 key points that I keep in my back of my mind. And it's come from a place, and I'll tell you no lie, I had been seriously frustrated with running my program, Fish and Fins, and never really feeling like you have enough funds to make ends meet. Being on a tiny island, our importation costs are like 35%. So for instance, if you buy a GoPro in Florida, you may pay, like for the latest GoPro 10 or whatever it is now, would be maybe $400 US. Imagine when I buy that here on Montserrat, I've got to pay another $200 US to just get it into the country. And that's not even including port charges and handling. So our costs are real, and it's been very frustrating. And sometimes working with international NGOs, I was also getting frustrated because I felt sometimes exploited. I felt sometimes like we were asked to do certain works. We would get small grants that could only barely cover the work. We were doing like, you know, for maybe doing significantly more work than what we were getting paid for. And it was very tiring, draining, and frustrating. But I thought to myself, okay, I can either get extremely annoyed by this and angry, or I can take the perspective of looking at what the solutions might be. And that's where I came up with this framework, because I thought to myself, okay, how can we give information to international organizations about how it is that we would like to be worked with, how it is that we can work with as equal partners to be able to accelerate SDG 14 and 13 this decade. And that's where we've come up with these 5 points, which I'm about to share with you now. One of them is, for small island states, especially the Caribbean region, swimming lessons is really key as to how we work together to create climate and ocean solutions. Learning to swim is a very big deal. We need to improve the capacity, and almost any project that is coming to do any sort of ocean activity needs to be looking at what's the local capacity for learning to swim and being safe in a water environment. Because ocean conservation, I believe, ocean science, are all part of the same intersection where the race, the space, and the class all collide. And for me, we can't really be talking about a sustainable blue economy, especially when it comes to small islands that are in a peculiar and unique circumstances, like even Montserrat, without looking to say, okay, are the people in the community ready to embrace these innovations, these new ideas, the conservation? Are we in a position to help collect the data? And in order to do that and to be comfortable in the marine space, we must be able to learn to swim. So that's me and some of the kids in Fish and Fins, where we've just had some swim drills and snorkel drills going on in the Bay Area. And we use the Bay here as our swimming pool, because there's no Olympic size or junior Olympic size pool here. You either use the pools at the villas or you use the sea. So the sea is what we had for free, so we use what we've got. The second part is social impact, right? And the question is, how are we making a difference in the community? And I wanted to share these with you because I know you're all thinking about maybe doing your own projects, getting more involved in conservation and environmentalism and climate action. And I think it's really important to consider who needs to be partners in order to build power and partnerships that provide access to finance and information flows. How do we better widen our networks in small communities? Who are some of the champions, the ocean heroes, and so on in this space? Now, I've put here just some logos of organizations that I think are doing really great work in the Caribbean that you might want to connect with. It's the Hay Campaign. And the Hay Campaign are working along the lines of health and climate action. And they were born out of the Ashley Lashley Foundation, which is focused on sustainable goals and gender equity and so on. There's also the Global Yardie, who is run by a young Jamaican, and they're really doing podcasts, exploring culture and sustainable development with people across the world. And then there's also the Breadfruit Collective, which is a young woman from Guyana, and they are working on environmental justice and gender. So that's just a few organizations that are working at the intersection of climate, gender, justice, and of course, because we're all island people, the ocean will always play a part in that as well. So how do we create the impact, the social impact? Part of it is connecting with the right people, connecting with the ocean and the environmental champions. Even recently on our island, our tourism development board, or tourism division, I should say, have started to work on a program which is going to help to encourage the island to see the value of environmentalism for tourism, and they are looking to put in place an environmental awareness champions. So really looking to see who are those people who are doing the heavy lifting work in the community and organizations, and how do we better build a bridge with those individuals. The third thing is investing in local science. Now, what we think we should all be focusing on is the local capacity of islands, small islands, to engage in science. The best people to look after our own backyard is always going to be us, right? And COVID showed us more than anything else how important it is to build local scientific capacity. For example, on an island like Montserrat, we would have had a lot of projects that might have been going on with the UK Joint Nature Conservation Society or environmental advisories from the United Kingdom. And many of those technical staff and scientists weren't able to travel to the islands for the past 2 years, which means that very vital and important work and data was not able to be collected as we would have wanted it to. Had we had more scientific capacity on the island, we would be able to continue work more or less uninhibited. Now, so for me, in the back of my mind, I'm constantly thinking, how do we really improve science in the islands? How do we build local capacity for a scientific community? How do we make science part of a smarter model for tourism? And I'll probably have to come another time to talk to you about that, because I've been thinking about the idea of smarter tourism and putting equity and resilience in that model as well. But some of the take homes I want you to have is when you're looking at your projects and your work and your research and, you know, wherever you're working in the world or in your area, is these are some of the things we can do. Offer long-term loans of equipment. And I know maybe university professors might have access to this talk, but in those countries that you're working with, how can the university share resources, share equipment, so that locals can continue to explore their backyard and interpret and use the data that is so vitally needed? We need a better relationship with managing and sharing data. A lot of times scientists may come to the islands and do some research, but there's never that engagement and outreach back. Very few instances where we really try to open that information up to as wide a community as possible of local folks. Everyone matters, and I think very much in this ocean decade, we are in a very urgent stage of ensuring that as many people have access to information and are able to be part of the solutions. I believe people are ready and wanting to be a part. Sometimes they just don't know how. So always including them in the conversation and giving them the tools they need and supporting them in developing the utilization of those tools is very important. There may even be opportunities for collaborations with global scientists in your institutions, in your organizations, in your own NGOs or nonprofit organizations that you may be setting up now or in the future. And I also think, finally, that in many of the high-level projects that are happening, maybe projects in the region of $250,000 US and above, which sometimes we get, or you may be working in and with, how can we factor in some money or a budget line which allows for university-level training, fellowships to be embedded in the project so that we can get science being funded for local citizens, ordinary citizens, people very much like myself. And probably one of the things I should have said before is I've got a degree in management studies. I didn't do a degree in marine science or biology or anything like that, or even technology. It's very much me being a very ordinary, everyday citizen with just a passion and seeking out the knowledge consistently that has allowed me to even be here to speak to you today. So it can't be underestimated, the power of utilizing your circles and your network and your resources to try to embed and strengthen local scientific capacity. And 4 is empowering local NGOs. And the biggest point I would like to say here is that sometimes perhaps what I'm asking you to do or sharing with you as a possibility within this framework for equitable collaboration is maybe sometimes disruptive, right? To get someone that you maybe do not know, do not look like you, to try to build friendship, to be able to build network. It sometimes could be an uncomfortable place, but we've got to get uncomfortable in this decade. And we also need to see how fast and efficiently we can put resources. And it may not always be money resources. It could be kind. It could be things like, you know, you're good with like taking photographs and videos. Maybe you could just link up with an organization and say, I've got this, I can help you with these. Just send me through Dropbox and I'll edit everything for you. I'll help with your social media page. Or I'll come down to the islands and I can see if I can raise my own funding and help with swimming lessons or something to that point, but always trying to go beyond your comfort zone to see how we can empower the local NGOs. And I can't say enough about this because a lot of the times the money is getting to the islands, but it's not getting to the people who are really needing to do the work and can really connect to the community to see that the work can be effective, that can be long lasting as well. So disruption, I'm all for disruption. Disruption creates opportunities for people, and the opportunities creates entrepreneurship, an entrepreneurship mentality, which is necessary in the islands. And also that is what leads to innovation. Now, innovation may be a term that you are comfortable with in the US or the organizations that may be listening internationally. But for us in the Caribbean, it's not even like a luxury item. For us, the idea of innovation and having space and confidence and resources to innovate, it's absolute must for the Caribbean that we do innovate in this period of climate emergency. We don't know how much time we're gonna have to be working on these solutions before one big bad hurricane comes and destroys a lot of the infrastructure and work that we have been building many years. So solidarity, I think, is another key point. Building solidarity within your network, within your partners, and it takes a longer time to build real friendships and real networks and to build trust, especially in small communities that may not know you and that you yourself are not familiar with. But persevere and do not give up. Where possible, maybe you could even act as mentors for other organizations and other young people. You know, one of the young people in Fish and Fins, for instance, said to me something I felt was kind of profound when I asked her two things. I asked her, why do you think that not as many Caribbean young people are involved in climate action, in advocacy? You know, you guys may do strikes, you may have projects, you do cleanups, you know, you lead your own programs and do it all. And there were two things that came home. As a Caribbean folk, we are not as comfortable with protest, right? And that may be a lot linked to our colonial past, but we're not as comfortable with protests. And also, I remember the young person saying to me that sometimes people may laugh at you and not take you seriously, and they were concerned about that. But more so, this Fish and Finner who was in our program and now is studying in the UK said to me, well, the universities have all the resources. You can get funding, you have the resource, you have the advice, you have the help, you have the network, and very much like the organizations that I'm even speaking to now, your organization through the university. So I'm saying all that to explain that even though we are aware of issues, we are on the front line, we have this ocean and environmental space in our backyard and surrounding us completely, we're immersed in it. Sometimes it could be you that's the mentor. And mentorship is incredibly important. Perhaps even you may find that bringing on board mentors from the Caribbean could also be valuable in terms of adding perspective to your work. And that's maybe another way to find creative ways of funneling money and finance and resources to empowering local NGOs who may not be getting that support. So accessing greater circles of influences and sharing your platforms, I think, is also very key. You may not have to give money, or when I'm talking about giving in kind, is sharing those platforms. So if you see someone who's doing really good work, to amplify it. It could be on social media, IG, wherever it is, amplify it, share it. I came to speak to you here because one of your colleagues recommended me to do so. And that was a really good way of really sharing your network and your influence to help to empower a local champion and a local NGO. You may even have advice for recommendations on grants and things like that. So these are just some of the very practical, down-to-earth things that you can do to really help to build equity in our ocean economy, in our blue economy, for the climate action that we need to see this decade. And finally, it is the legacy around our projects, making sure that our projects have long-term sustainability. And for me, on the project I've been running, we had maybe projects funding 5,000 US up to 25,000 US dollars, but very short projects, maybe for 6 weeks, or maximum maybe six months at a time. And sometimes that could do a little bit more harm than good, to start a movement and have to stop, not being able to continue. It could really impact people's lives, family lives, people's educations, and we must be sensitive of that. Also, maybe some people shy away from committing because it's not long-term enough. Governments may shy away from being partners if it's not long-term enough, if it's not sustainable, if they're not really seeing over time how this can be scaled and how this can be really benefiting our community. So making projects long-term is what I would love us all to strive to do. How can we really look at a 3 to 5 year period for a project, for your relationship building? Because it's long-term work, this is lifetime work. And your HR budgets, for those of us who are going to, who are already managing budgets, or are going to be working with budgets going forward, is making sure you have a little bit more room in that HR budget. You make the figures a little bit bigger so that you could value traditional knowledge and expertise. So you can have even more speakers like myself who are really on the ground, who are grassroots folks, who can really show you, build relationships, give you advice, and be really strong allies in small communities like my own. So equitable collaboration, I wanted to maybe leave maybe 4 things that can stay in your head, like the questions that we should always be asking ourselves, that I am constantly asking myself, is if a project is being advertised, maybe it's a job that I want to do, it's a partnership, it's a sponsorship, or maybe it's even a project that I'm thinking about doing, is what's the project legacy? How is this going to really improve a community? What's the project legacy? How are things going to be after this project has ended, and the funding streams have ended? And a lot of the times around the blue economy, people talk about the blue prosperity, and it's gonna increase life, it's gonna increase jobs and improve livelihoods. But for who is really going to benefit? Is the money going to come in and turn right back out again of the islands? Or is it really going to help to build social impact, build infrastructure, improve people's standards of living, give some hope in what is very much turbulent times right now? And who are the ocean climate heroes? You know, get on Google, ask questions, call folks, follow folks up, slide into people's DMs, you know, and how is the community going to be better off because of the work that I do? I think these are very important questions to ask for equity in our collaborations. And this is a photo here of some of the people who I have worked with and who have collaborated with me over the years. We have people like Ayana Johnson, we have Stephanie Tate, we have Olympic swimmers here out of the neighboring islands. fishermen, and young children who have all collaborated, and I would say are all great examples of what equitable collaboration could really look like. So I've got a framework for the Equitable Caribbean Blue Economy, which I wrote in 2020, and you can get a free copy of it on my LinkedIn. So if you go to Vita Wade on Instagram and you go to my link tree, you'll see on a tab there where you can access the framework at no cost. I've recently put it on Amazon, so if anybody wants to contribute and has the means to contribute, it's $4.99, and you can buy it on there as well. And you can also follow me on IG or follow me on LinkedIn. And I think that's pretty much what I have for you for today. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask them. And I hope this has been useful and practical for the work that you've got to do.
Hi, Vida. This is Brian Levine. I had a question in terms of, I know the colonial roots for your island from the connected to the UK. Does the UK provide much in the way of still support to kind of address some of the equity and environmental issues? I know that a lot of people evacuated, like yourself, when the volcano erupted. But how much of a supportive partner are they, or are they not, right now in the economy and environment?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. We're always grateful for the support, because at the end of the day, as I pointed out, Montserrat is a UK overseas territory that has an active volcano. We don't have an economy of our own, and the UK provides granting support. So all of the funding, most of the funding that comes to the island is coming through the UK government to provide our basic needs and necessities through infrastructure, education, and health. Okay. Now, when it comes to environmental conservation, then Montserrat, we have work to do. We really do have work to do. We do get a lot of technical officers coming to from the United Kingdom to Montserrat. Organizations like CFAS and the JNCC, Joint Nature Conservation Trust, who help to work around building capacity. However, we have a long road to go still, because the way that things work within our island means that, in effect, the environmental ministry is probably getting 70% of its budget for projects to do with wildlife conservation, resilience, climate mitigation. But out of that money, the vast majority of the money goes back to the technical officers. Maybe only 30% of the money stays on the island. So it restricts how much the ministry can flexibly do, and it doesn't really leave room. It doesn't really leave room for supporting local NGOs and organizations. We need to do a lot more work to build like private and public partnerships, and to really look along the lines of what does equity really look like in terms of these relationships. Say, for instance, we may be utilizing deep sea drop cameras here for conservation, as an example. Scientists may come down and they may provide the equipment. So maybe $20,000, $30,000 worth of equipment may come down, but then the scientists go back and no one on the island may know even how to use it after the training has finished in a week, you know? So we have work to do in terms of building the equity, the collaborations, so that it's meaningful. But there is support. What we must be mindful of is that the UK has now separated from the EU, and there's still some question marks as to the substantial funding that we would have gotten from the from the EU. What's going to happen with that? How are we going to fill the boxes? And when it comes to bigger climate funds, like the other climate funds like GEF and things like this, because Montserrat is a British territory, Britain usually negotiates funds on our behalf and speaks on our behalf. So the government of Montserrat may not always be in a position to express what they're really in need of, and they rely on the UK government to be able to provide the resources. So there's no freedom to really tap into some of these major grants and funding streams to provide things like, for instance, bringing on stream our geothermal project, which is very important for this season of climate action that we need to address.
Thank you. Another question I had is, have you ever thought of trying to expand Fish and Fins to any of the neighboring Caribbean islands? And if you did, are there any islands where you would want to start?
Yeah, so we work on the Caribbean island of Barbuda, which is right next door to us, on the next island. To get to Montserrat, you have to come through Antigua. So Antigua and Barbuda is where we have worked, and I've worked with our project there for, I think it's about 4 consecutive years just before COVID happened. So we would do the same sort of programming on that island. And it all boils down to having the money to scale the project. And I find that a lot of the funds are looking, and you guys could tell me if you're wrong, if you think I'm wrong here, but as I analyze what gets funded, it looks sometimes that some of the funding agents are looking at what feels like the emergency at the moment. So it could be to do with coral bleaching or growing corals, or it could be with diseases such as the stony coral disease, things like that, which may get funding. But other work that's necessary for capacity building, that is more focused on the future development and the future investment in people, is not always seen as a priority. And so we struggle sometimes to build that work. One of the ways in which we are looking to expand across the Caribbean, because it is the intention for Fish and Fins to expand across the Caribbean this decade, and I'm still very much working on that with our team, is to build collaborations with international NGOs that share on a similar mission and mindset, and are really looking to build in those MOUs that put us as equal partners over this period of negotiation. But it takes time. It's active work, but it takes a lot of time.
Thank you.
Hey, Vita.
Hey.
Now, I already asked you this question earlier before the lecture, but I wanted to address it again. What made you go into environment actually? Or at least the environment, environmental, yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a very sort of earthy person. I grew up, of course, on this very tiny island. As I said, there's 4,500 people. Every road leads to the beach. You're completely immersed in a tropical environment. So it's hard not to. I grew up kind of catching butterflies, doing my own little experiments in the backyard. So that was very a part of my upbringing and a part of my spirit from very early. But perhaps the main thing that made me decide was I had a moment of tragedy in my life. A moment of tragedy that said to me that I've got to live my life urgently because I don't know if today is going to be guaranteed. So I wanted to start to do the things that I really loved. And what I loved was being in the environment. And I wanted to do something for my island. I remember our island has been devastated from a volcano and we had to redevelop. And I wanted to see that more young people, children especially, knew how to swim because I didn't. So when I was growing up, I didn't know. So having all those thoughts in my head and having gone through personal tragedy, I decided, okay, what are you good at, girl? And how soon can you start? and don't bother waiting for the equipment, don't bother waiting for the money. And so I went to my community and I spoke to the fishermen, I spoke to the police officers, the Marine police, I spoke to teachers, I spoke to child protection experts, I spoke to schools, I spoke to politicians, and I started the program with what we had. And when I started, I had zero money for this, and I had 4 sets of fins. And after I initially got this group of people together and spoke to folks, I then had 75 75 snorkel sets here, equipment, and scientists willing to help. So I guess it's just that wish to act urgently, and the fact that I'm an island girl through and through, and I want to make a difference for my community.
I also have another question, right? Because you touched on it on your explanation, but how do you go about so you have you draft up your idea, right? You get it up and how do you go and convince people to actually go, hey, this is actually an idea worth putting effort into or putting my mind into? How do you convince them to do such things?
Yeah, I think it has to come from your gut, right? It can't just be something that you're doing to just look cool or to feel like you're ticking a box when it comes to convincing folks. I think you really have to dig deep and just ask the question, is this really what I want to do? And once you convince yourself that is what you want to do, and you have thought it out strategically as to what are some of the elements that need to be put in place, then you find the confidence and you just don't accept no. You don't accept no. You set the intention, this is what we're gonna do, and you do it. And it sounds maybe like I'm oversimplifying it, but I think when your heart is wired to anything, it's whatever you love, you protect, and you want to do something about. So people see that, people sense that, and it's very clear even in negotiations. People talk about negotiating a project or a contract and so on. Sometimes negotiation is just about making the right friends in the right places. It's not always about the facts and figures. It's about does someone else believe in your story? Do they believe in your mission? And can you convince them? And if you can convince yourself and those around you, then you're more likely to convince a lot more folks as well. So I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, that's pretty helpful. Thank you so much.
Vita, I'm curious, what besides the UK, what countries have you had an opportunity to visit and engage with? I don't know if you've been to the United States yet. I was just curious.
Yeah, I haven't been to many other countries in person as yet to engage with, but I have done a lot of virtual work with the US and the Ocean Heroes Network, which took me virtually to Africa and Asia. I am doing a lot more work with the US, and I just say respect to the Americans, because I find that in the circles that I have been privy to, there's a lot of folks who are very conscious of the fact that we can do things better, that there is urgency for the work, that we need to be better partners and mentors and get uncomfortable, some getting very understanding of their own privilege, and willing to do the long-term work to support others. And I'm feeling and sensing a lot more of that coming out of the United States than I'm seeing it coming out of the UK, which is not great when Montserrat is a UK overseas territory. But I am going to be at the New England Aquarium as a guest speaker next month. And I'm also going to be at the Rock Retreat in Gibraltar next month and as well, because I'm very keen to share my story in a kid's book in some way. So I'll be spending time in Gibraltar, which is also another incredibly environmental space, to really sit down with incredible artists and writers to be able to come up with some creative ideas for a children's book. So that's what I'm looking towards.
Oh, that's amazing. Does anyone else have any other questions? Okay, it looks like we don't have any more questions, but thank you very much for your time. I'll just ask you if there's any words you want of wisdom you would like to leave with us before you finish your speech. Just any advice you can offer.
Yeah, I just want to say that we all can truly make a difference. And I think if there's one thing that should inspire you all today, is that Vita Wade is not a marine biologist. Vita Wade did not have the kind of network that I have today when I started. I really had nothing, and I didn't know much. I knew how to swim, yes, but I taught myself, and I didn't have lots of gear, and I really knew no one so in this space. So it's a testament that we all can make a difference, and it doesn't take a lot of folks. Once you are dedicated and you're in the right circle of people, so you reach out to the right network, maybe you're going to volunteer with a group, or maybe you're going to start your own group. But once you have that intention to make a difference, then I'd say go for it, and don't let anything or anyone deter you, because the universe has a way of just connecting the dots and making sure things happen for the mission that you're on. So I would say, feel confident that you can, and that you start with what you have. And sometimes you gotta jump before you're ready, and the universe will catch you. But we need lots of folks to be urgent about this decade, this ocean decade, and this climate emergency. And I can share it from my perspective that and I'm sure you guys are also sensitive of this too, is that the hurricane seasons are no joke. And the economic crisis that we're in is no joke. And we need to find creative ways. Maybe some of them are going to be funny ways, but creative ways to get the message out to folks, to do the work, to roll your sleeves up, to get in the trenches, whatever you've got to do to make a difference in your community, in your school, and in the world. You can be a global ambassador for whatever you want to be for this, for these 2030 goals. So I say go for it. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Go for it. You can. There's nothing stopping you.
Thank you very much, Vita. On behalf of Florida International University and our Florida International University Student Government Association, thank you very much for taking some time today to speak to us and our students and to share your words of wisdom and your inspiring story. And thank you for everybody who's also come and to attend in person as well as watching online. And we are recording this, so we'll eventually have that on YouTube to share. But thank you very much for all your inspiring words today.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. It's been my absolute pleasure. All the best to you all in all you do.